The meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Our first item on the agenda tonight is a request for a site plan approval by Robert Aaron, Dimension 4, for a property located at 1601, 1625, and 1649 Vernon Street, also known as the Park Vernon Apartments. Planning Director Sheila.
Just to give you an overview, of course, the materials are in a packet, but I'm going to highlight the intent of this project is really to improve the parking lot, repave the existing parking lot. There had formerly been an encroachment actually over the property line that's being corrected as part of this project. They're meeting the pavement setback line even though it's just a replacement, so they are meeting that. They have a new garage and shed that are being placed here and some additional landscaping that's also being included as part of the project. So that's really the crux of it. It's trying to spruce it up, make it rehab it to a certain degree. They're also making some interior improvements as well, but the exterior improvements and alterations are why it's before you for a site plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Maloney, second by Kirchma. Comments or discussion? Commissioner Hanna.
Yeah, thanks. On the letter, Mr. Stacy, it mentions gazebo. Is that, that's the shed?
We understand the gazebo has been removed from the project,
Got it.
so it was part of an earlier iteration.
Earlier letter. Okay.
Yep. Commissioner Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had some questions on this. I mean, I'm in favor of doing this, but I just had some general questions. Does the Dane County Housing Authority own this? They do or
I mean,
don't?
he's right here, right?
Yep.
Why don't you come on up and maybe you can help?
My name's Andy Chitwood. I work for Wisconsin Management Company at this point, and I'll be running this project. We still own the property. The closing date is finally officially set at March 31st, and at that time, the Dane County Housing Authority will take over the property. We will still manage it for them and do the construction work.
Okay, so this isn't currently owned by the Housing
No.
Authority? Okay.
It's part of three other, the entire project includes 3 sites, and they've been waiting for final approval from the Village of DeForest, which they finally got last week, and now have permits for that, and it's moving forward, and closing dates have been set in it.
Okay, so Dane County Housing Authority is going to take the property over then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And do we have other properties right in that neighborhood that are owned by Dane County Housing Authority also?
Yeah, I believe the ones on Hanson Road.
Right behind it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. A much needed and very welcome improvement to the property. Thank you. Our next agenda item is a request by the Stoughton Utilities for site plan approval to construct a substation on a portion of the parcel at 3201 Lacombe Road. Rodney.
Updated plans and materials are in your packet. I just happen to have the landscaping plan on here so we can begin that as a starting point. Bob Cardez has a team of people here that'll be able to help walk through the alterations that have been made and how they address the comments that were received at the Planning Commission last week.
Thank you. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Would you like to come to the microphone, please? State your name and address, sir, since we don't know who you are. I'm teasing.
Bob Cardez, Stoughton Utilities,
Okay.
P.O. Box 383, your utility provider. With me today, we have Zach Simpson with Strand Associates, and this project is really a partnership between Strand Associates and Forrester Electrical Engineering. We have Bruce Beth from Forrester, the CEO there. So you see the landscape in the front, and Bruce is also available to talk a little bit about the substation and how it's going to work and the general layout. But we listened to the commission, and we've come back with some landscaping that we think you're going to like on the west and on the south. Of course, we already had it on the east and the north, as would be required by the ordinances. So I guess I'm going to turn it over to the professionals and they can kind of describe a little bit more about what we've got there and how we think it's going to function well.
Thank you.
As Bob said, I'm Zach Simpson with Strand Associates. I believe at the last meeting, you guys requested that there was additional landscaping installed along the south property line and the west property line. So we've gone ahead and added that. The berm request that was from last time, we didn't really address. We do have a berm. Well, actually, I take that back. The berm stopped about halfway down the west property line previously, and we've extended that all the way around and across the south property line as well. But it's not to the elevation that you had requested. I think there was a request for elevation 935, and I think it's closer to 930 or 931. And the reason that we didn't change it significantly is because we would have had to shift the entire site, or the entire substation itself, to the east in order to maintain a mobile slope on that berm. So I guess to further elaborate on the landscaping, we've shown some lower level shrubs and coniferous trees on that southwest corner per your request as well.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any questions for Zach while he's here? Commissioner Kirchman.
Question about the berm. It's not a berm if you're at 930 because the center of the site is 930. We asked for at least 3 to 4 feet, so 933, 934, it hasn't been addressed at all, in my opinion. I thought we were pretty clear last time. The spot out to the west is, if I can read these right, I think the high point's 929, which is a foot below, 2 feet below on the one side and 1 foot below in the middle. I'm just, why can't that be addressed?
Well, we could go to a steeper side slope, I suppose, or, I mean, when you say there's not a berm there, I guess it's kind of relative to the area that it's over right now, because it's shown, I mean, we're filling, so obviously it's higher than what's there. But you're right, the elevation of the middle of the site might be similar.
The point of a berm is to hide what's in there, not to have it at the same elevation as what's in there.
Sure, but it's kind of a matter of perspective and where you're looking at the berm from as well, so.
You're higher, I think, at the roadway, aren't you?
Which roadway are you talking about?
138.
At 138. So you're talking about the north side of the site? Is that correct?
Well, I'm particularly worried about the west side as you're coming down 138, which is partially addressed with some additional landscaping, but there's still going to be sight lines down 138 into the substation, even with some of the mature plantings.
So I guess I can tell you that we can take another look at trying to make that higher. But again, it's either gonna have to compromise the mowability, if that's a word, I'm not sure, or we're gonna have to shift things to the east slightly.
Commissioner Hanna.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess if we're talking about mowability, how the dense planting along the west side, is there going to be any mulch underneath these trees, or is it just in the grass? Is it going to be mowed around?
I think we were anticipating no mulch, it would just be mowed around the
Yep.
trees, yep.
So if you're able to mow around the existing berm, which is 930, right? So your slope 4 to 1. I see there.
When you say existing berm, which berm are you talking?
Sorry. So the actual, I guess.
Northwest.
Yeah, northwest, which is the top point is the same elevation, right? But it appears to be a berm. as it drops off, down towards the west and then to the east, actually, to the detention basin. I think if that's able to be maintained at the least, that could continue along that west property line. So it's essentially extending that high point, which is 930, along to the south.
This one?
Exactly. So you're already having.
That's what we've done. This is an old drawing.
Well, what's, then I don't know that I have the current one, Zach.
I may have only sent the landscaping drawing. Go back to the other drawing,
Okay.
please. That does have proposed contours on it, though.
This one?
So if
Go
you
with this
zoom
one.
in there, yeah. So we wrap that
Roll it up.
930 elevation or contour back to the south.
Okay.
I think that's what you're describing.
Yeah, now I can kind of see it
That's
on
kinda-
the landscaping
there's a
plan.
lot
It's
going on
it's
this
it's
sheet.
hard to see. It'd be
Yep.
nice to see an updated grading plan with
Sure.
the plant layer removed. But I could see that it is slightly different. I guess, 4-to-1 slope, I mean, you still want to be able to maintain it.
I mean, 4-to-1's kind of a desirable. We could go to 3-to-1 if that's something Bob would be interested in.
We can maintain either. We contract that out.
Question, so Bob, how often is this site mowed? I know it's not, we're not looking like an open space park or anything, right?
All of the sites we own are contracted out at the same time. So the wells in town, again, depending on the weather patterns or so forth, in some of them, I think we see mowing every week. The substations, when things are growing, they tend to have a little more shade because we do have a few more plantings around north, south, and east. They're probably going to get in there every couple of weeks. But the one thing we've asked the contractor to do is that we want it to look fine. And they could very well be in there every week. It depends again on the rain. They're planted. The shrubs are all growing. Out at the north sub Friday, and the little pine trees that I remember planting, they're 30, 35 feet up in the air now. So I think everything kind of works. The substations that one like this, they're certainly not going to be abused. They're going to be something that we want to be proud of.
Certainly, thanks, Bob. If I could continue. So now that I see the new grading, and I understand perspective, that makes sense to me, that it will appear to be a berm as you're coming in from the west side. Heading east, it's going to look like in elevation. But if we could, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's an encroachment issue, but if the plantings could be planted on that 930, because right now it looks like they're planted on the downslope.
Downslope a little bit. They could be moved to the top.
If they could be shifted to the east, that would be great. And then to comment on a few of the species. So my concern would be the arborvitae. With this being, out near a wooded area, I've certainly seen deer out that way. And the arborvitae, they can get really eaten alive, 5 feet up, and you have these ugly looking trees. So if those could be substituted with deer resistant, such as a juniper,
Sure.
that would get, to a similar height. The Technies, a 12-foot, which they can get that tall. They can get probably even a little taller eventually, but you can find similar species with size and shape with the juniper. So I would make that suggestion as far as shifting it to achieve the maximum height that we can. And then swapping some species there, but I like the density of evergreen along that west side, as it is really the most visual, and I guess the north side is too.
I think, Bruce, you may want to comment on the height of those related to the transmission line that's going to have to come in.
That would,
Point
yeah,
out.
if you want to comment on that now, that'd be great.
I'm Bruce Beth from Forster Electrical Engineering, and I don't live at Stoughton's utility office. like
That's
Bob.
good. That's
But,
good.
So the substation, of course, we can put lipstick on the pig, if you will. You know, I like what's inside the substation, but I understand that most people would rather not look at it. So we try to site our substations to keep them out of view of the public. And what I can do with a substation design is I can make sure that all of the utilities circuits are coming out underground, so that makes it possible to hide it. There's only one area where we can't hide it, and that's where the source comes into the substation. And the source is going to come in one side or the other. We presume it's going to be from the west side. With that assumption, looking at this view from the west side, the taller structures that we have a hard time hiding, that height of the cross member above is determined by the height of the fence. If I make the fence higher, the structure gets higher. If I plant taller shrubs there, taller than the fence height, then the structures get higher still, or they come and cut the structure, the landscape down. So we're trying to achieve there the fence. Rodney, could you show the same view without the shrubs? So if we did nothing, and this would be the view with the elevation at the outside of the fence. So this would be the straight line there is the elevation at the grade or right outside the fence. The fence itself, for a matter of scale, is 8 feet tall with a foot of barbed wire above it. The structures above there, the tallest structure is 50 feet tall. If the fence were any taller, for every foot we add to the fence, we'll add to the structure. So when you put the berm in front of it, now, Rodney, could you flip back to the other one? So if you, for comparison, when you put the berm in front of the fence, oops, the one with the trees and shrubs and that one. So you see the flat, the ground elevation, that's what the berm did for you by bringing the berm all the way around. It doesn't hide anything more than the fence, which already has slats in it. So it really doesn't shield the view of what's inside the substation. The berm itself doesn't, but what's planted on the berm does. The problem is the row of techniques that are shown there, that those are, we're only showing them to the same height as the fence. And if they get 12 feet tall, they probably will get trimmed by American Transmission Company. What I showed for perspective then are the white pines, and they're not precisely located according to the landscape plan, but I show them 15 feet tall, kind of a compromise between what they'd be when they're planted and what they'll be when they're mature, but just to get yourself a perspective. And now, Rodney, sorry to keep bothering you, but now the one that you did before with the landscape plan, I'm trying to point out that the area, that kind of oblong circle in the upper right corner of this drawing, that's the wetland delineation. Yeah, there. And that is already heavily wooded and treed, which we're working with to our advantage. Actually, the white pines kind of blending into that creates quite a nice wall of vegetation to shield the view from the northeast and the north as you enter Stoughton. I don't believe anybody from Highway 138 will be able to see it with the trees that are shown there. And the way the driveway comes in, you'd almost have to look all the way back, to see the substation as you're passing those trees. The view from coming out of town on Highway 138 would be shielded by the vegetation on the north side. So I believe that we've shielded it from the public on the highway view. The best place to come into the substation with the transmission line is in the southwest corner, because that transmission line would be shielded then from public view as well. The taller trees would hide the transmission line entrance into the substation. So I'm not sure that you want to put taller trees or taller, the junipers instead of technies makes sense, but the height would have to be limited to no more than the 10-foot height of the fence.
Thanks, that's a great explanation. That makes more sense why. So where the white pines stop and then you transition to the junipers and the spruce, those would be able to grow to full maturity, or would those be trimmed too on the plan there, right? So right there, that transition, and then as you head, south, or does that whole side, I guess, where's the zone where they would trim?
If for perspective, you can see those lines that inside the substation, and you can see where the right one there is.
Yep.
If the wire is entering at an angle, the trees that are shown as shown would clear those wires. If the wire is straight on, then I think the last tree that's shown might have to be trimmed or relocated a little bit. We don't have a design. We don't even have for sure the route that ATC will be entering the substation. When we do, we may have to make some slight adjustments to this, but not to change the character of what we're trying to achieve here is screening it from public view.
Sure. Yeah, I like I said, I appreciate the detailed explanation, and it's very logical. I think what you have there is great. I think the evergreen is great because it provides sort of a visual distraction than if you were looking straight at a fence and a nice, barrier. If anything, with the landscape plan, you may consider just a few more evergreen along the north side. And maybe in place of some of the viburnums or deciduous shrubs. I guess my next question would be the temporary construction entrance or the drive. On the grading plan, it says preferred site access. And then on the new landscape plan, it just says temporary construction. I know this was a question that we had in the last meeting about, is that,
So what we're waiting to hear back from DOT. We've submitted a permanent access permit to 138, and it sounds like that's going to be a challenge. So we're working with them to try to get a construction entrance there, which means that, maybe we're able to get a temporary connection, but the permanent access would come off of Lacombe then in the future.
Got it. So it just
That's
be
why there's some differences in the
gray area in there.
the
Yeah, so it would
descriptions.
be an extension. Let's see, the last plans we had, it'd just basically be an extension straight off the end of Lacombe.
Yeah, Lacombe comes into our property now.
It does.
It goes past the telephone building there. We believe that necessity, that's how we would go. And we're also thinking that the property as a whole is, what we don't use will be sold. The roundabout that's there right now with the 3 legs could very well turn out to have a 4th leg there.
Sure.
There are opportunities. Construction, I'm still optimistic that DOT will work with us on that. But we'll have to see.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just, I know typically these are just gravel drives, right?
I think, Rodney, you,
Well, the temporary aspect of it will be
Temporary
gravel.
would be,
The
right.
other stuff would be bituminous.
right.
Inside here is gravel. I think it would inside.
Everything
fence
inside
here
the
is
fence would
gravel.
be aggregate, yeah.
Aggregate, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Maloney?
I guess, kind of given some of the constraints that we talked about, I like the fact that maybe the landscaping's down just a little bit to kind of create more of a screening, below the drip line of the trees. Also, could you characterize how often the site is actually accessed by staff or others?
Once a week, if that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Continue, if you'd like.
The landscaping plan is a great improvement. I think the berm will be, superseded by the plantings that they provided here. And just knowing the constraint of the fence height and the operation of this long term, I really, I appreciate their effort on adding the additional lower screening to the level they could. So I'm in favor of what they did here.
Thank you. Further comments? Commissioner Engelberger?
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I like what they brought back. It's fine. With some of the things that have been said here, I appreciate the other commissioners' input into this, but I do have a few questions for Bob, if he could come up to the microphone. The more we look at things, the more plans you get, the more questions things come up. What's your time frame on this, Bob, this project?
We'd like to have that in operation May of 2018.
Okay,
We'd like
so
to get the
starting
peak
would be
next
when?
year. We look at it as if we've already started the construction. I think, of course, it was graded last year. We have the transformers ready to be ordered. We're going to start advertising the actual construction of the substation itself very shortly, probably as early as next week. Everything takes long lead times, and I think generally we've looked at 1.5 years to complete a substation in the past, and so we're probably right on line for that.
Okay. I guess the question I have, Rodney, do you have a map that shows the overall layout of the area over there? Even bigger than that. I've got this, Rodney, but would you have one bigger than that? I mean, would you have one that shows like some of the KPW on both sides of the road? KPW and the other side? I mean, I just...
I can certainly try to find it.
Okay.
Just an aerial.
I would be able to
Yeah, like an
kinda-
aerial, just an aerial view, map view or whatever.
Just
But
access Dane or something.
what's the size of this lot here, Bob?
17 acres, and we'll end up, I think, retaining 4.
So our portion of it right there is 4 acres.
Right.
Okay, and
They own the whole thing, though.
right.
Yeah,
right,
we
but
own.
I mean,
we own-
for this facility is 4 acres.
Sure.
And I guess the question I want to raise is, I mean, we need this, and my problem here is, the more I look at it, is this the location we really want?
Oh, absolutely. And
And I understand, Bob, for your purposes, it's probably the location we want. My problem in looking at this is this what we want for the entrance of Stoughton from the west?
you know,
Is this an adequate picture?
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that.
You want to take the good with the bad.
I understand.
When I talk about electric substations, what you want to always try and do is you want to put the station at what they call the sink, where the load is going to be. Right now, the way we're serving this area, we're serving it from the south. So the Acker Road south, and we're serving it from the north, from County Trunk B in the vicinity of the railroad crossing. We're doing that with long circuits in both directions. And the problem that we create for ourselves right now is as these circuits get longer, you all hear from me from time to time about a squirrel can cause an outage. What happens is an outage that could be relatively small on one particular pole is going to end up knocking off a significant line to our customers. So as you get stretched out like we are, our customers are going to run into more outage problems. And no matter what we do, I was mentioning to the folks before the meeting today, we just got a national award for reliability to keep those lights on. But that's why you want to have the substations near the source.
Yeah.
This substation is not only going to be serving this area and going back to, say B and 51, but it's going to be serving all the way out
Right,
past our school
right.
road. So when we did the study, I think back in 2005, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we looked at 5 sites. And there was one comment, I think, from Mr. Truel, that, you know, it would have been great to put it on the other side of Highway 138. Of course, back then, there was no talk about this. But the other thing was we'd be putting it in a hole, because that's what that site used to look like. That's why this site was so ideal, coupled with the fact that we're so darn close to a transmission line.
Yeah.
So it's probably, it's been optimum for some time, and right now we're trying to shade it as much as possible, but I couldn't picture in my mind where else to put it. We've got north, south, and east covered. We knew we'd need something on the west. If we would have been north, or if we would have been farther out west, it would just be more distance to come back to feed the load.
Right, and I understand all that, Bob. Here's my concern. Like I said, is this what we want as people come into town from the west? This is our entrance to the city. Is the first thing we want to see right next to the Welcome to Stoughton sign, a great big electrical substation. And the reason I'm saying that, my solution to this would be, and you can tell me what kind of problems would be besides some more time, would be to move this thing to the south of that wooded edge that we own currently.
Move it down here.
Down here?
Yep,
Okay.
either there or over to the right farther, straight south.
Okay.
Straight south of where it is now.
So this is the substation where it is proposed right here. You're talking back in here more?
Just I guess longer.
I guess I'm confused what I'm looking at here then.
Okay.
Okay,
let's-
so right now, when you go to this map,
Yeah, it's right here. This is that parcel, right here.
okay, I was thinking it
Settled
was up here.
overall parcel.
Okay.
The
Okay, so-
substation is being proposed, is
Yep.
being constructed in this
Okay.
general region.
So, my concern there would still be, it's an eyesore. If it was on the south side of the wooded edge of our property there, it would be a better location and probably hidden behind those trees. Now,
We don't own that one, do we?
am I right or am I wrong?
This isn't the city
I understand that.
All right.
I understand that. I'm talking about visual, what's going to look good for this city. And is it going to look good there, or would it look better on the backside of that woods, behind those trees? And it wouldn't be moved very far. I understand you'd have to attain property and that kind of thing, and change some things, but my concern is visual for this city.
I wonder what it will look like, Michael, and I don't have my
Well,
vision
all you got to
goggles
do
on
is
right
put
now.
up the elevation view that we
But I-
looked at before, that's what you're gonna see.
I know, but I hadn't finished. I wonder what it would look like when there are other buildings on the site. You know, and that's not the first thing you see if there's, because I know Bob and Jamin and are anxious to sell the rest of that property, and I think we're a little anxious to see what could be there, so I wonder what it'll look like. When you look at it just like that, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but if you put a building or so on there, I think it's going to look much better.
It may look better, if I could continue.
Sure.
I mean, it may look better with other buildings around. So I guess that's my major concern is just visual for the city. Is this what we
Absolutely.
want there? A couple of options would be, like I said, suggested, move it behind the woods where it's screened even more, or like what's done in other communities. Examples would be Sun Prairie and Madison, where they have, basically it looks like a building without a roof on it. And I understand that's expensive, Bob, but you know, we're talking about, is this what we want visually for this city coming into town? So that's my question, and that's the reason I raise it, is should we have some more discussion on it, or is everybody just okay with what we got here?
I know that there was a comment over here, if you'd like to come on up to the podium and.
You mentioned about the trees. I would agree that the trees would do a great job of screening it, but we don't own that property and it wasn't for
Understand.
sale.
Yeah.
The trees that I mentioned in the wetland area, they're visible from this aerial. I wanted to point that out. And if you took those trees and continued them down the west property line, basically, we're creating that woods along the west property line, trying to do the same thing with the uniting that berm to those trees and leaving those trees, kind of hiding them behind those trees. With the property we own, that's the best screening we could achieve, to do the same thing you mentioned with the trees that are there. And the other thing I'd point out, well, and this is just a cost issue now. I understand the aesthetics of entering Stoughton. I don't want to have that be the first thing either. That people see. That's why we're trying to hide it as best we can. But the cost also we answer for, and that the further south we go, we have only one circuit coming out of the substation going south. We have 4 circuits coming out to the north and east, north and west and east. This is the ideal site. I mean, 138 and 51. This is the center of where everything spider webs out from. Electrically as well. We have a circuit going into the Kettle Park West development, and we have one going west on Highway 138 all the way out to Lake Aganza Road. We have one going to Cummins. We have one going to the school down Whole Avenue and on Pleasant Hill, I think. And then we have one going north on Highway 51. So it's a natural to tie into existing infrastructure without a lot of new construction. If the further south we go, we have to recreate all 4 of those circuits, and
I understand that. I mean, if you're gonna move it on the other side of the trees, you're not talking about a huge distance, you know.
right.
So I guess I wanted to raise that, and, you know, do we need some more discussion about that? I think we may need some more discussion about that, because I don't know that, you know, a lot of people, when they look at a map or a plan, they really don't know what they're looking at. You know, I'm from the construction industry, so I kind of know what visually what things are going to look like after they're built.
Yeah.
And right now I've got a concern that a lot of people in this community, I don't think are going to like to see what's going to be there visually.
You know, it's a challenge with utilities. I know when we built the water tower on Racetrack Road, we had people that didn't like it, and but we knew it had to go there. The water tower that we have up by the high school now, those 2 towers are the first things I see when I'm coming here from Oregon. And but the way I look at it as an engineer, you can do the best you can to keep things as aesthetically pleasing as well. But at the same time, you got to make things affordable for the customers. And I think this discussion didn't really take place when we looked at the 5 sites. Ultimately chose what I certainly believe is going to be the one that serves the customers the best. Like I said at the last meeting, we're going to make this site look great, and it's going to be aesthetically pleasing, and it's going to blend, and people will more or less forget that it's even there. I can guarantee you from my experience. To start over right now, I am worried about keeping the power on to customers. This is off of a 20-year plan, and we've been working on it a long time. And the only way we would get any property to the south would be through condemnation, and the city doesn't like to do that. And it isn't healthy really for anyone. So I think we've got a lot of room. I think the landscaping plan works very well. But I'm anxious to make sure we keep the lights on, and I don't think we'd want to try and stop this project at this stage.
Thanks, Bob. Commissioner Hanna.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't know if any of you guys could speak to, Commissioner Engelberger brought up the Sun Prairie utility transformer off of 151 there, and I mean, I think that would certainly maybe be a little bit more pleasing, and I don't know if there are concerns about heights there because it's, you know, it's a non-conductive material and things like that. Do you know what I'm referencing?
Oh, sure, I've been there. And actually, I think we're intimately aware of that. A couple things about what we call the wall, I guess, is that the one thing the utilities are real concerned about right now is site security. People hear about cybersecurity. When you surround a substation with a wall, it doesn't do much as far as security goes. And it's $1 million, easily. And that's why out of those 40,000 substations, I think that I mentioned at the last meeting or so, the ones that are walled, I think with the exception of Sun Prairie, are probably the real big jobs that where the transmission lines are coming together, serving major cities. This one, it just wouldn't appear to warrant it, and I don't really think you'd like what you saw when it was all done. But it is a tremendous expense to really not give you much.
Thank you. Commissioner Maloney.
Motion to approve with staff comments, changing the arborvitaes to junipers.
Is there a second? There's a motion by Commissioner Maloney, a second by Alderperson Jensen. I know, Commissioner Hanna, you had a comment.
Yeah, if I could make a few more planting suggestions, if that's all right, Mike?
Jensen.
I'd like to see the smooth sumac removed on the species. They're invasive. They spread and take over, so I'd rather not see that happen and have a huge sumac problem. And if those could be replaced with deer-resistant evergreen, and I'm having to struggle how to word this along the north side to increase evergreen coverage in there. I appreciate the tall trees, and I would, I think the height is going to be great. But from a different perspective, on a lower plane, but 15 feet and lower, I'd like to see some more screening that way instead of some of the deciduous shrubs there. So if the deciduous shrubs could be replaced with, I would say, small evergreen tree or large evergreen shrub, that would be deer resistant. I'd like to see that that'd be adjusted, if that's all right with you guys.
Thank you. Commissioner Kirchman?
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes. The grading plan that we were looking at didn't have the changes, so looking at the landscaping plan and then the explanation that we have satisfies my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Engelberger?
Thank you, Aaron. Is this, so if I understand the motion, is this also include approving this resolution? Is that what we're doing here, or is
Yeah,
it?
the resolution's a
Yeah.
planning commission resolution, correct?
Okay,
Yep.
so this is,
We're adding language to the resolution.
okay.
Yep.
So then there's going to be a vote on the resolution after that? Or does this encompass approving the whole thing?
I'm understanding
it
them
does.
to really be acting on the resolution. This
Okay.
says,
Okay.
with the staff review letter, this says the staff review letter, and I added the bullet
Okay.
related to the additional.
Okay, so you're
evergreen.
just adding it, and then it encompasses the whole resolution?
You're really acting
Okay.
on the resolution with the
Okay,
additional.
so I guess if I could, I feel that this needs a little bit more discussion. This may very well be the way to go, but I raised it because I think there's going to be a visual concern here. I'm in favor of this thing, but I really think there may be a visual thing here, so I'm going to vote no on this, and I think we should really have more time to discuss this, to see if there are some options and get actual costs. Does it cost $1 million, or does it cost less than that for a surround building? What would it take for relocating if we had to relocate? So I think there's some questions to be raised here, and I would like to see that addressed before we approve it. But
Thank you. Any further comments before we vote? We do have a motion by Maloney with a second by Jensen to approve the resolution with that one additional bullet point, correct? Did I say that
Well, it was
right?
a run-on bullet point, if I'm hearing it right, and I want to make sure I'm characterizing
Yeah.
it properly. It was with a staff review letter based on the landscaping plan that was included, the updated landscaping plan, because the grades are slightly different, but we're basing it on the landscaping.
The
plan.
grading of the landscaping.
Yep. With the, with arborvitae being changed to the junipers, smooth sumac, now again, this is, I want you to
Yeah.
confirm this
Yep.
was included. Smooth sumacs removed and replaced with deer-resistant evergreens and increased evergreen plantings on the north side of the substation by having deciduous trees replaced with,
Or deciduous shrubs replaced with large evergreen shrubs or small evergreen trees that are deer resistant. Thanks, Mike.
Sounds like an electrical storm out there right now. There we go. No? No?
the motion and a second, or did you guys
You comfortable with
concur
that?
with all that language?
All right. You're good?
I am.
Comfortable? All right. Comfortable, I guess?
I have it down, I think.
Awesome. All right. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no?
no.
Motion carries with one no from Commissioner Engelberger. That leaves one item on our agenda for tonight.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Jensen, second by Hannah. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.